Once a man truly understands this about women, the entire dating experience begins to shift permanently. It doesn't arrive like a sudden bolt of lightning. Instead, it slowly creeps in through a quiet pattern of repeated disappointment that keeps appearing until your mind finally stops arguing with reality. That's the moment everything changes. You stop treating her behavior like some emotional puzzle, and instead you begin to read it like a consistent system. As Maya Angelou once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. The shift isn't that you suddenly became bitter, it's that you became more precise. You stop asking what she meant, and you begin asking what she repeatedly does. You stop chasing explanations and start noticing patterns. Once that happens, the confusion begins to fade away. To be clear, this isn't about hating women, playing manipulation games, or trying to win some battle. It's about perception. It's about recognizing patterns instead of getting hypnotized by emotional stories. Most men are conditioned to take everything personally in dating. If she pulls away, you assume you did something wrong. If her interest fades, you think you weren't enough. If she becomes inconsistent, you believe you need to try harder. If she turns cold, you convince yourself that you simply need to communicate better. Men are often trained to treat a woman's changing energy like a report card that measures their value. And that mindset is exactly what keeps them stuck, because they keep trying to repair something that was never stable from the beginning. Eventually, though, experience breaks that illusion. Not because you were hurt one final time, but because repetition slowly destroys denial. You start noticing that different women with different personalities, different lifestyles and different backgrounds can still create the exact same pattern: warmth, distance, mixed signals, and you doing all the emotional analysis by yourself. That's when the illusion finally collapses. You stop chasing potential and you start respecting consistency. And once a man sees that truth clearly, it's almost impossible to unsee it. 1. Women respond to emotional positioning. Women respond strongly to emotional positioning. And if you're a man between the ages of 35 and 70, who has been on enough dates to realize that doing everything right still doesn't always lead to the outcome you hoped for, then this might be the missing piece that quietly changes the entire dynamic. Women don't experience your words the same way you experience your own words. What they feel is the emotional atmosphere behind them. They notice the tone beneath them, the posture within them, the steadiness that surrounds them. They also notice the tension that leaks out when you're trying too hard, and the calm presence that appears when you're no longer seeking approval. That's why two different men can say the exact same sentence and receive two completely different reactions. Because for her, it's rarely about the sentence itself. It's about the signal. It's about what your presence communicates about your self-respect, your emotional discipline, your standards, and even the stability of your nervous system. This is where many men become stuck, because they were taught a very simple formula: be consistent, put in effort, be stable, and be clear. In theory, those are good values. They are strong values that help build careers, families, and reputations. But dating doesn't operate like a workplace, and attraction doesn't function like an employee performance review. It's not a moral scoreboard where the nice guy automatically wins and the confusing guy automatically loses. It's a psychological process, a felt experience made up of signals that the body understands faster than the mind can logically explain. Once you accept that truth, you stop arguing with reality and start working with it instead of against it. Don't confuse the thought "she should appreciate this" with "she actually feels attracted to this." The word "should" belongs in a courtroom, and attraction is not a courtroom. Attraction is a nervous system response, and female psychology is highly tuned to emotional patterns, not just logical explanations. That's why she pays more attention to what you tolerate than what you promise, what you reinforce rather than what you intend, and what you repeatedly excuse more than what you claim to believe. If you miss this point, You'll keep assuming the problem is your words, when the real issue is your positioning. Be honest with yourself for a moment. How many times have you tried to win a woman over with explanations, reassurance, or long conversations meant to prove your good intentions, only to feel her respect quietly slipping away? The more you explained, the more you clarified, the harder you tried to be understood. It almost felt like you were giving a presentation to someone who never even asked to see the slides. That doesn't mean women are unfair. It means the energy of over-explaining often carries the emotional signal of someone seeking permission, and seeking permission is not the same as leading with self-trust. Women can feel that difference almost instantly. That's the first psychological insight that can permanently change the way you approach dating. Stop treating words as your primary tool and start focusing on your emotional frame as the real foundation. Because she's listening with her entire body, not just her ears. She's sensing the stability of the man behind the message, not simply the message itself. You have to understand something important. Effort isn't attractive when it feels like you're trying to purchase love. Effort becomes attractive when it looks like commitment built on standards, when it looks like a man choosing rather than chasing, a man investing rather than begging, a man offering rather than bribing. The key difference isn't the amount of effort you put in. The difference is the emotional position that effort comes from. Don't overlook that word, position. Position determines everything. If you're emotionally positioned beneath her, constantly trying to climb toward her approval, your compliments start sounding like coins being dropped into a machine. You keep pressing the buttons, hoping the reward eventually falls out. Sometimes it might, but you'll always carry the anxiety of wondering whether you paid enough, and she'll feel the pressure of being treated like a vending machine that dispenses validation. But if you stand beside her emotionally, calm, grounded, clear and respectful of yourself, your compliments feel different. They land like sunlight, warm, natural and sincere. They don't feel needy, heavy, or loaded with a hidden expectation. This is why women respond less to the exact words you say, and more to how you show up as a person. The way you show up tells her whether you are secure within yourself, and whether being close to you will feel peaceful or exhausting. Many men misunderstand female psychology, and assume emotional positioning means acting cold, playing games, withholding attention, or being intentionally confusing. Don't fall into that trap. Those are cheap tactics that might create short-term excitement, but lead to long-term stress. You're not trying to win a single moment. You're trying to build a life. Emotional steadiness is not the same as emotional distance. Emotional steadiness means you can genuinely like a woman while still remaining yourself, still maintaining your routine, and still holding on to your standards, still speak honestly, still walk away from disrespect without creating unnecessary drama, still be kind without turning yourself into a doormat, still desire her without making her your emotional oxygen. Emotional distance is when someone punishes others with silence and pretends it's strength, and that approach almost always backfires with quality women. Women with strong character don't chase confusion. They choose clarity, but it has to feel confident, not like a rehearsed sales pitch. Be clear without begging. Be direct without being forceful. Be warm without completely dissolving yourself. Be interested without becoming dependent. Success in dating isn't about convincing her to like you. It's about showing up as a man who already respects and likes himself, and allowing the right woman to respond to that reality. Don't fight the reality that women respond to patterns. Accept it. Your boundaries speak louder than your speeches. Your standards speak louder than your promises. And the calm way you handle tension speaks louder than trying to constantly fix her emotions. Most men are raised to solve problems, and that trait is admirable. But dating often punishes the fixer when he becomes the emotional janitor, cleaning up situations that quietly test whether he actually has a backbone. Tests happen, not always intentionally, but as a natural part of human behavior. People naturally push at the edges to see what's real. That's why what you tolerate matters so much. Tolerance teaches someone what type of treatment becomes normal with you. Whatever becomes normal eventually becomes invisible, and what becomes invisible eventually loses respect. Understand the reinforcement cycle. If you reward disrespect with extra attention, you teach her that disrespect is the fastest way to get your energy. If you reward inconsistency with loyalty, you show her she can remain uncertain and still keep you around. If you respond to cold behavior with gifts, you teach her that coldness will be compensated. If you answer flakiness with even more effort, you teach her that your time has little value. Then you feel confused because your words say you want a serious relationship, but your behavior shows that you'll accept almost anything as long as you're not alone. Women respond to behavior, not the advertisement. Don't claim high standards while living like a discount store. Let your lifestyle confirm your values. Clarity without backbone is just talking, and backbone without warmth is just harshness. Warmth combined with backbone is rare, and rare is naturally attractive. Another important psychological insight is that women often respond more to what you don't do than what you do. Restraint communicates value. When you refuse to chase disrespect, you signal self-respect. When you don't overtext just to calm your own anxiety, you signal emotional stability. When you don't argue over every small point, you signal security within yourself. This isn't about manipulation or playing games. It's about choosing where your energy flows. Energy is your real currency, and women can sense the place it comes from. Don't overwhelm her with attention and later resent her for not returning it. That isn't generosity, it's a hidden transaction. Hidden contracts slowly destroy relationships. People remember how you made them feel. Aim to be the man whose presence feels steady, not like a constant negotiation. Be playful, grounded, and self-directed. Female psychology is quietly asking questions all the time. Is this man emotionally safe? Does he stay stable under pressure? Does he respect himself? Can he desire someone without losing himself? If your behavior answers yes to those questions, your words gain weight. If not, your words become background noise. Consistency creates attraction only when it's consistency of strength, not constant over-availability. Reliability becomes attractive when it feels like a mountain, solid and dependable, not like customer service. Effort without discernment eventually leads to exhaustion. Exhausted men become resentful, and resentment never creates love. Invest your energy where there is reciprocity. Adjust your behavior without turning everything into a lecture. Enforce your boundaries calmly. If she cancels plans carelessly, reduce the level of access she has to you. If she shows disrespect, disengage quietly without creating drama. If she treats you with kindness, acknowledge and reward that energy. That's what emotional positioning looks like. Dating changes completely when you stop trying to decode every emotion and start observing consistent patterns. Patterns rarely lie. Chaos can sometimes feel like chemistry, and anxiety can sometimes feel like love. Learn how to fall in love without losing your balance. Discipline isn't the enemy of romance. It actually protects it. Don't mistake anxiety for love. Don't mistake familiarity for destiny. Raise your definition of attraction. Mature women respond to congruence. When words align with actions and desire is balanced by discipline. Speak less but mean more. Explain less, demonstrate more. Chase less, choose more. Certainty creates a sense of safety, and safety allows softness. Softness opens the door to intimacy. Stability without neediness is magnetic. Don't try to convince, just be clear. Build a life that you genuinely enjoy and invite her to be part of it. Whenever you feel like you're trying to earn someone's affection, pause for a moment, shift your position, redirect your energy back into your own life. Stay calm, because calm carries power. Calm reflects leadership. Calm reveals your emotional frame when situations test you. Hold that frame without anger. Use information instead of drama. Be someone who selects, not someone who begs. Mystery often comes from having a full life. Generosity must be balanced with discernment. Warmth combined with standards wins in the long run. Interpret situations structurally rather than emotionally. Choose peace while still holding passion. When you stop needing something from women, you naturally become more attractive to the right ones. That is emotional positioning. That's real psychological insight. When your position is grounded, warm, and rooted in self-respect, dating stops feeling like guessing and begins to feel like choosing. 2. Calm without boundaries reads as availability. Calm without boundaries often comes across as simple availability, and this is one of those truths most men only realize after years of quiet frustration. They do everything they were told was correct, yet still feel something slipping away in their dating lives. There was a moment when I realized that the more I explained myself, the worse things seemed to get. The more I tried to be patient, calm, and understanding, the less it seemed to matter. The more space I offered, the less respect seemed to return. At first, that realization can sting because it challenges a belief many men carry for decades, that calmness will always be rewarded, that stability naturally attracts, and that consistency by itself builds desire. Those beliefs aren't foolish, they're simply incomplete. Women don't dislike calm men. They aren't avoiding stability, and they aren't repelled by consistency. What truly matters is how those qualities are carried. Calmness without boundaries signals availability. Stability without selectivity can look like weakness. Consistency without consequences often looks like permission. Once you recognize that pattern, something shifts inside you. You stop performing. You stop overcorrecting. You stop explaining yourself into smaller and smaller corners. When you stop performing, the entire dynamic changes, because attraction isn't created by how much you give, it's created by how you give and what it costs for someone to access you. Many men confuse calmness with passivity because they were taught that being a good man means being endlessly understanding. But be honest with yourself for a moment. How many times have you stayed calm while being disrespected, thinking that your patience would eventually be appreciated? How many times have you carefully explained your intentions, believing that clarity would fix the tension, only to feel the situation grow colder instead of warmer? That experience isn't a failure of calmness, it's actually a misunderstanding of boundaries. Calmness only has real power when it's rooted in self-respect. Calm without boundaries isn't strength, it's simply silence disguised as virtue. Don't confuse this idea. Being calm does not mean being endlessly available. Being understanding doesn't mean accepting everything. And being stable doesn't mean becoming so predictable that you fade into the background. A high-value man clearly understands this difference. He doesn't raise his voice, but he also doesn't lower his standards. He doesn't argue emotionally, yet he still acts with clear decisions. That is masculine energy, expressed with control, not force. For many men, there comes a moment when the pattern finally becomes obvious. You look back and realize that the more accommodating you became, the more taken for granted you felt. The calmer you remained during disrespect, the more disrespect seemed to appear. The more consistently you showed up without limits, the more casually your presence was treated. That realization can hurt, but it can also be freeing. Once you understand that calmness without boundaries often reads as simple availability, you stop blaming yourself for not being enough, and you stop blaming women for being confusing. Instead, you begin seeing behavior clearly. You start understanding female psychology on a deeper level, not as manipulation, but as responsiveness. People respond to structure. People respond to consequences. People respond to value. Women are no different. They don't respond to endless tolerance, they respond to calm strength paired with clear limits. Don't confuse this idea with being harsh or emotionally distant. Boundaries are not punishments. Boundaries are information. They quietly communicate what is acceptable and what isn't, without lectures or unnecessary drama. A man with boundaries doesn't constantly explain himself. He doesn't negotiate for respect, and he doesn't chase understanding. He simply adjusts his presence. He offers less access where there is less care, and he offers more where there is reciprocity. That isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And that clarity is how a man attracts women without losing himself in the process. Stability without selectivity can appear weak, not because stability is bad, but because selectivity is what gives stability meaning. Think about anything that is always available, always open, always free. Over time, people stop appreciating it. That's not a moral judgment, it's basic human psychology. When your time, attention, and emotional energy are endlessly accessible, their perceived value begins to fade. A high-value man is stable, but he is also selective. He doesn't offer full emotional investment to someone who hasn't demonstrated respect. He doesn't give relationship-level effort to someone who is still behaving casually. He understands that masculine energy isn't about chasing, it's about choosing. Choosing where to invest. Choosing who gets access. Choosing when to step back. That's how you attract women who are capable of meeting you at the same level. Consistency without consequences often reads as permission. This is the line many men cross without realizing it. They stay consistent even when the behavior they receive doesn't improve. They keep showing up the same way, hoping their consistency will eventually inspire change. But consistency without consequence teaches people that nothing changes, no matter how they behave. If someone can cancel plans at the last minute repeatedly and still receive full access to you, they learn that your time carries no real cost. If someone can speak carelessly and still receive your warmth, they learn that your emotional boundaries are flexible. If someone can pull away and still be chased, they learn that distance earns pursuit. This isn't female psychology being mysterious. It's basic reinforcement at work. A high-value man understands reinforcement almost instinctively. He doesn't threaten and he doesn't complain. He simply adjusts his behavior so that actions meet consequences quietly. Quiet consequences are far more powerful than loud explanations. Once you understand this, you stop performing. Performing is exhausting. Performing means trying to say the perfect thing, act the perfect way, and remain endlessly calm in the hope of being chosen for your patience. When you stop performing, you stop trying to earn attraction. You stop trying to attract women by proving how understanding you are. Instead, you begin attracting women by being grounded in who you truly are. That shift alone changes everything. The entire dynamic flips because you're no longer acting from a fear of loss. You're acting from self-respect. Women feel that shift almost immediately, not because they sit and analyze it, but because they experience it emotionally. Masculine energy that is rooted in boundaries feels safe, it feels solid, it feels trustworthy. And don't mistake this for becoming cold. Coldness isn't strength. Coldness is usually fear, pretending to look like control. Boundaries can still be warm. Boundaries can still be calm. They can be expressed with a steady voice and relaxed posture. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available for that. I enjoy spending time with you, but I don't do last-minute plans. Simple, clear, no apology, no anger. That is masculine energy at its most attractive. That is how you attract women who respect themselves as well, because women who value themselves are naturally drawn to men who value themselves. Many men worry that setting boundaries will push women away, and sometimes it will. But the women who disappear when you stop being endlessly available were never aligned with you to begin with. Don't fear that loss. Recognize it as clarity. The women who stay, the women who lean in, The women who respond positively to boundaries are the ones capable of building something real. A high-value man isn't trying to be liked by everyone. He's focused on being respected by the right woman. Respect is the foundation of attraction that lasts far beyond the initial spark. Understand this clearly. Calmness is not the absence of action. Calmness is controlled action. Being calm means you don't react emotionally, but you do respond through behavior. You don't argue endlessly, but you do adjust. You don't explain yourself over and over, but you do move differently. That's why calmness without boundaries fails. It removes action from the equation. It teaches people that nothing changes, no matter what happens. Stability without selectivity and consistency without consequences are some of the fastest ways to drain attraction without even realizing it. Once men truly understand this about women, dating changes forever. They stop trying to be endlessly accommodating and start being intentionally grounded. Be calm, but be selective. Be understanding, but remain firm. Be consistent, but let your consistency include consequences. That's the balance. That's the line. That's where masculine energy becomes magnetic instead of invisible. When you operate from that place, you stop chasing validation. You stop over-explaining yourself, and you stop feeling confused by mixed signals. You begin to read behavior clearly and respond with calm clarity. Over time, you naturally become the type of man who attracts women because your presence carries weight. This is how attraction happens without tricks, manipulation, or pretending to be someone you're not. It starts by understanding something simple. Your calmness only has value when it is protected. Your stability becomes attractive only when it is selective. Your consistency only matters when it includes consequences. Once that realization clicks, you stop performing. And when you stop performing, dating stops feeling like work and starts feeling like a choice. That's the moment a man fully steps into being a high-value man, grounded in masculine energy and capable of building attraction that is both deep and lasting. If this message resonates with you, don't just nod and move on. Act on it. Drop a comment right now and claim this truth. Calm with boundaries is power. Like the video, subscribe for more clear and unshakable wisdom, and remind yourself daily that respect doesn't come from explaining more. It comes from choosing carefully and standing firm. 3. Emotional labor versus emotional regulation. Here's a difficult truth. Most men are never told directly, and once you see it clearly, dating genuinely changes forever. Emotional labor is not the same thing as emotional regulation, and confusing these two slowly erodes attraction over time. I've seen this dynamic play out repeatedly, and the experience of my friend Ethan illustrates it perfectly. Ethan is thoughtful, he listens carefully, he communicates openly, and knows how to discuss feelings without panic or defensiveness. Early on, women often tell him he's different, refreshing, even safe. They admire his openness and appreciate his emotional awareness. But then something gradually shifts. Interest fades. Respect softens. Boundaries begin getting tested. Effort becomes one-sided. Ethan can't understand what changed because he's doing exactly what modern dating culture told him to do. Explain more, accommodate more, show up emotionally at every moment. But as the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Attraction doesn't grow from constant explanations. It grows from emotional steadiness, from the calm authority of a man who doesn't leak anxiety into every interaction. Women rarely bond through constant verbal processing or emotional caretaking from a man. They bond through polarity, through contrast, through feeling chosen rather than managed. When a man invests too heavily in emotional labor, he unintentionally moves into a role that feels more like emotional support staff than a grounded masculine presence. This isn't criticism, it's psychology. It's how human nervous systems respond. In modern life, especially with constant texting, over-communication, and the pressure of social media. Many men unintentionally talk themselves out of attraction. They try to explain everything rather than embody stability. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus warned, no man is free who is not master of himself. Emotional regulation means you don't chase reassurance. You don't negotiate desire. You don't flood conversations with emotional explanations just to keep someone interested. You remain centered. You respond instead of reacting. You allow silence to do part of the work. That is old Stoic wisdom in action. This approach creates safety without softness, confidence without arrogance, warmth without neediness. And here is the part most men miss. Women don't want to feel emotionally managed. They want to feel emotionally met by a man who is already steady. When Ethan keeps explaining, accommodating, and adjusting, he believes he's being kind. What he's actually signaling is uncertainty, and uncertainty erodes attraction faster than mistakes ever will. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Over-emotional labor is preemptive suffering. Emotional regulation, on the other hand, is leadership of the self. In today's dating environment, where emotions are amplified and attention is constantly fragmented, the man with a disciplined mind stands out without trying. He doesn't perform depth, he lives it. He doesn't chase connection, he creates space for it. That is Stoic wisdom playing out in real time. Not because it's cold, but because it's calm. Not because it's rigid, but because it's rooted. Men who truly master emotional regulation don't suppress their feelings, they contain them. They don't unload their emotions onto a woman and call it intimacy. Instead, they process their emotions internally and then show up clear, decisive, and fully present. As Viktor Frankl famously said, between stimulus and response there is a space. Within that space lies our power to choose our response. That space is also where attraction lives. That space is where polarity exists. When you eliminate that space by constantly over-explaining, you remove mystery, tension, and desire. This isn't about manipulation. It's about maturity. It's about understanding that attraction isn't purely logical, and trying to reason your way into someone's feelings is usually a losing strategy. In modern dating, the men who succeed are not necessarily louder, more expressive, or endlessly accommodating. They are steadier. They don't negotiate their worth. They don't chase clarity at the cost of respect. They regulate their emotions so that others feel safe around them without feeling responsible for managing them. That's disciplined, grounded behavior. It's the kind of mindset long emphasized in Stoic philosophy. Think of the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. The idea that mastering yourself is the foundation for everything else. Once men truly understand this, dating begins to change permanently. You stop trying to be impressive and start becoming immovable in your values. You stop explaining and start embodying. You stop chasing connection and start allowing it to grow naturally. That's Stoic wisdom applied to relationships. That's how a man learns to master himself, his relationships, and ultimately his life, quietly, confidently, and without apology. 4. Clarity comes from tolerating less. Here's a truth most men don't hear clearly enough, and once it truly lands, dating rarely feels confusing again. Clarity doesn't come from saying more, explaining more, or trying harder to be understood. Clarity comes from tolerating less. It comes from observing patterns instead of believing promises. It comes from watching behavior instead of negotiating meaning. Attraction isn't a debate, and desire isn't created through consensus. That's where many men become lost. Men are often taught, especially as they grow older, that maturity means discussing everything, processing every emotion out loud, clarifying every intention, and smoothing tension with more words. But attraction doesn't respond to effort the way logic does. Female psychology doesn't reward over-communication the same way problem-solving does. Don't confuse emotional availability with emotional labor. They are not the same thing. Be honest with yourself about this. Interest that requires constant maintenance isn't genuine interest. It's consumption. It's someone enjoying your attention, your energy, and your reassurance without offering consistent engagement in return. That's not mystery, that's a pattern. Instead of asking what did she mean, start asking what consistently happens when I step back. Real desire moves toward you without needing to be pulled. Understanding psychology isn't about manipulating people, it's about sharpening perception. Attraction reveals itself through ease rather than effort, through reciprocity rather than persuasion. Don't chase clarity through conversation when behavior has already given you the answer. Look honestly at what you're tolerating. If replies become slower, but explanations increase, if enthusiasm fades while excuses multiply, if effort only appears after reminders, that isn't confusion, that's clarity. You may be resisting. Much of the frustration men feel in dating comes from believing that words are the primary signal. In reality, actions are the language that rarely lies, and female psychology tends to be consistent on this point. What someone truly feels shows up in what they choose to do when nothing is demanded from them. That is why over-explaining kills momentum. It replaces attraction with obligation, and obligation never creates desire. You must learn to fall in love with reality, not potential, with what is happening, not what could be fixed. Potential keeps men invested long after clarity has already been available. Don't negotiate attraction. Don't manage interest. Don't reward inconsistency with more access. Instead, be calm, be observant, and be selective. When you tolerate less ambiguity, less mixed behavior, and less emotional drain, your mind quiets down, your decisions become simple, and dating stops feeling like a puzzle you need to solve. That's when psychology tricks stop being tricks and start being awareness. That's when female psychology becomes understandable instead of intimidating, because you're no longer trying to control outcomes, you're simply responding to patterns. Interest feels light. Desire feels voluntary. Connection feels mutual. Anything heavy, effortful, or draining is information, not a challenge. You must respect that information. Many men remain stuck because they believe walking away is failure, when in reality walking away from unclear situations is strength, and strength is attractive because it signals self-respect without needing to announce it. Don't ask for clarity from someone who benefits from your confusion. Be clear with yourself first. That alone changes who stays and who disappears. And when the wrong people disappear, the right dynamics finally have space to show up. This is how dating changes forever. Not by memorizing lines or mastering clever psychology tricks, but by understanding female psychology well enough to stop fighting it, and by learning to fall in love with consistency, calm and mutual effort instead of intensity that needs constant repair. If this message hit home, don't just listen. Act. Like the video, subscribe for more grounded psychology insights, and share it with a man who's tired of confusion and ready for clarity. Then drop a comment to lock the lesson in your mind and make it real. Clarity comes from tolerating less, not explaining more. Let it remind you to observe desire, not negotiate it. 5. Boundaries reveal attraction. Attraction isn't built by effort. That statement alone unsettles most men, especially those who grew up believing consistency, sacrifice, and availability were the currency of love. But stay with it. Attraction isn't something you manufacture by doing more. It's something revealed when you finally stop doing what costs you your center. Attraction isn't built by effort. It is revealed through boundaries. And that shift is what changes dating forever. Not tricks, not tactics, not clever lines, boundaries, and not the kind you announce like rules in a handbook, but the kind you live through action, silence, and restraint. Boundaries aren't speeches, they're behavior. They're what you allow, what you stop, and what you walk away from without needing applause or explanation. A man with boundaries doesn't threaten, he doesn't negotiate, he doesn't justify. He simply moves differently, and that difference creates contrast. And contrast is where attraction breathes. Most men misunderstand boundaries because they think boundaries are about control. They think boundaries are about telling a woman what she can or cannot do. That is not a boundary. It's insecurity dressed up as authority. Real boundaries are inward-facing. They're about what you tolerate, what you respond to, and what you continue investing in. That's why boundaries reveal attraction instead of forcing it. When a woman is genuinely interested, boundaries don't push her away, they pull her closer. Boundaries clarify, they remove confusion, they remove noise, they show self-respect without needing to declare it. And self-respect is the foundation of masculine energy that naturally attracts women. Not performatively. When a man lacks boundaries, he becomes endlessly available. He answers immediately, rearranges his schedule, absorbs inconsistency, tolerates last-minute changes, stays polite when he should be decisive, and remains quiet when he should step back. At first, this can look like kindness, maturity, even effort, but effort without boundaries slowly erodes attraction. Endless availability removes contrast, and without contrast, attraction has nothing to lean on. Desire needs polarity, it needs tension, it needs the sense that access is earned, not guaranteed. When everything is always available, nothing feels valuable. That's not cruelty, it's psychology. This is where many men get stuck. They believe being a high-value man means being endlessly giving. But a high-value man is not measured by how much he gives. He is measured by how selectively he gives. He gives where there is reciprocity, where there is respect, where effort meets effort. That selectiveness is not cold, it is calibrated. And calibration is attractive. That is masculine energy at work. Quiet, grounded, non-reactive. A man who can say no without anger. A man who can step back without resentment. A man who can let silence speak instead of filling it with explanations. That man doesn't need to attract women through performance. He attracts women through presence. Boundaries are not rules you announce. They are standards you enforce through action. That means you don't warn someone 3 times that you don't like something. You respond once, clearly, and then you change your behavior if it continues. You don't threaten to leave, you leave. You don't argue about respect, you withdraw access. That is not punishment, that is alignment. And alignment is what attraction recognizes instantly. Because attraction isn't emotional persuasion, it's pattern recognition. Female psychology is highly sensitive to patterns, not words, not promises. Patterns, consistency, and stability signal value. Calm and nothing signals inner stability, faster than a man who does not abandon himself to keep someone interested. When you enforce boundaries, something important happens. You stop chasing clarity. Clarity comes to you because women who are genuinely interested don't resist boundaries, they respect them. They adjust, they lean in, they show up more clearly. Women who are not aligned fade, and that fading is not loss. It's revelation. You don't lose women by enforcing boundaries. You lose illusions, imagined futures, and stories you were telling yourself about potential. That can sting, but it's freeing. Illusions drain men more than rejection ever could. Rejection is clean. Illusion is exhausting. Many men fear boundaries because they fear loss. They fear that saying no, pulling back, or stopping overgiving will lead to abandonment. But that fear is exactly what keeps them stuck in dynamics that never fully satisfy. Boundaries don't create loss. They reveal it sooner. And sooner is a gift, especially for men later in life who no longer want confusion, games, or emotional noise. Men between 35 and 70 aren't looking for intensity for its own sake. They're looking for clarity, peace and respect. Boundaries are the gateway to all three. If you want to attract women without burning yourself out, you must understand this. Attraction grows in the space where a man chooses himself calmly, decisively, without hostility, without drama. Don't explain your standards repeatedly. Live them. Don't argue. When something feels off, step back. Don't reward inconsistency with more effort. Reward consistency with presence. That is how a high-value man moves, not to dominate, but because he values his time, energy, and emotional bandwidth. That valuation is felt, and what is felt is far more powerful than what is said. Masculine energy is not about being hard, it's about being anchored. Anchored men don't rush. They don't chase clarity through conversation alone. They allow actions to speak. They understand that real attraction isn't fragile. If it's genuine, it survives boundaries. If it collapses under boundaries, it was never attraction, it was access. And access isn't love. Access is convenience. Once you see that difference, dating changes forever. You stop proving, you stop performing, you stop auditioning. Paradoxically, that is when you start attracting women more naturally. This is also where psychology tricks stop being tricks and start becoming wisdom. The goal isn't to manipulate desire, it's to filter for it. You're not trying to convince someone to want you, you're observing who does. Boundaries act as the filter. They reveal who is genuinely drawn to your presence and who was only drawn to your availability. That distinction matters, especially if you want to fall in love without losing yourself. Love built on self-abandonment always ends in resentment. Love built on boundaries has space to breathe. Don't confuse boundaries with emotional distance. Boundaries allow closeness. They make closeness safe. They create structure. Just like a river needs banks to flow, attraction needs boundaries to deepen. Without them, everything spills over. Chaos replaces clarity, and chaos is not chemistry. Chaos is unresolved emotion. Calm isn't boring. Calm is regulated strength. Calm is confidence that doesn't need validation. Calm is masculine energy refined over time. Refined energy is deeply attractive. If you want to attract women who respect you, you must first respect your own limits. Don't overextend. Don't over-explain. Don't stay where effort is one-sided. Be clear. Be steady. Be selective. That's how a high-value man operates, not to win dating, but because he refuses to lose himself. Men who don't lose themselves become magnetic without trying. Remember, attraction isn't built by effort. It is revealed through boundaries. Boundaries aren't rules you announce. They're standards you enforce through action. Without boundaries, you become endlessly available. When you're endlessly available, you remove contrast. Without contrast, attraction has nothing to lean on. You don't lose women by enforcing boundaries. You lose illusions. And losing illusions is the first step toward building something real. 6. When men stop chasing. When men stop chasing, quietly powerful shifts happen in dating. Shifts most people don't notice until the results are impossible to ignore. What disappears isn't drama or conflict, it's structure. And that absence immediately reveals the truth of the dynamic. Attention isn't just affection, it's direction, it's gravity. It's the invisible force that keeps two people oriented toward each other. When a man withdraws that force, the system responds immediately, either by finding its own balance or by falling apart. That reaction tells you everything you need to know. Many men grow up believing that effort equals value, that consistency equals love, and that persistence proves character. In modern dating, this belief often traps men into stabilizing situations that were never mutual to begin with. Situations that survive not because both people are invested, but because one person is willing to carry the uncertainty longer than the other. This is where old Stoic wisdom steps in with uncomfortable clarity, reminding us that what truly depends on you are your actions, not the reactions of others. And when a man finally internalizes this, dating changes forever. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And strength in dating begins the moment you stop trying to manage outcomes and start observing patterns. When a man stops chasing, he stops feeding confusion. He stops smoothing over silence. He stops compensating for inconsistency. And suddenly, the dynamic is forced to reveal its true foundation. If interest is genuine, it recalibrates. If it was convenience, it dissolves. This isn't about strategy or control, it's about perception. It's about seeing dating as a system, not as a story you tell yourself to stay hopeful. In modern life, where attention is cheap and options are endless, many connections are built on momentum rather than intention. Momentum only exists as long as someone keeps pushing. When you stop pushing, you're not playing games, you're running an audit. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." For men over 35 especially, this means deciding whether you want peace or perpetual uncertainty, clarity or constant interpretation. The moment you stop chasing, you reclaim your time, your focus, your iron mind. You stop negotiating your self-respect for potential. This is where Stoicism wins. It becomes a lived practice. The Stoics understood that attachment to outcomes makes you fragile, while commitment to principles makes you steady. Dating rewards steadiness, even when it seems like it doesn't. When a man no longer stabilizes a dynamic with effort alone, the other person must choose to meet him in clarity or drift away. Either outcome is a victory, because ambiguity is the real loss. Seneca warned, "If a man knows not which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Chasing without direction is motion without mastery." The advice is simple but not easy. Stop over-investing in uncertainty. Stop over-explaining silence. Stop rewarding inconsistency with patience. Start observing what happens when you step back. Repeat this until it becomes instinct. This is old Stoic wisdom applied to modern dating. It builds an iron mind that cannot be shaken by mixed signals or delayed replies. When you stop chasing, you don't lose opportunities, you filter them. You don't become distant, you become centered. You don't manipulate, you observe. And observation is where confidence is born. In a world that encourages men to prove their worth through effort, choosing restraint feels risky, but restraint is power when grounded in self-knowledge. Stoicism isn't withdrawal, it's alignment, and alignment is what attracts what can last. When men truly understand this, dating stops feeling like a test and starts feeling like a process where calm replaces confusion, where choice replaces anxiety, and where your iron mind leads instead of your impulses. This is how you master the game without playing it, move forward without chasing, and win by refusing to invest where clarity does not meet you halfway. Conclusion. Once men understand this about women, dating changes forever. Vertical bar psychology tricks. All right, my friend, before we wrap up, let me leave you with this. If any part of this hit close to home, take a breath and relax. You're not broken. You didn't become cold. You simply became calm. That's what growth feels like. Real strength doesn't argue, doesn't chase, doesn't beg for clarity. It observes, decides, and moves forward. Here's the advice to remember. Trust what you consistently experience, not what you're told to explain away. Don't argue with confusion. Don't invest energy where peace never shows up. When something is right, it doesn't drain you, it grounds you. The moment you stop forcing understanding is the moment life starts making sense again. Thank you for being here. Seriously, if this gave you clarity, sit with it. Let it change how you move. If you're walking this path of calm strength with me, you're already ahead of where you used to be. I'll see you in the next one.